Good evening, Seaside Shadows. Sorry about the technical difficulties. I'm still getting used to doing this as opposed to giving tours. But I'm glad that you all can join us. Um, Today, I am very excited. I hope you all are excited as well. Hello to all of our new viewers. Again, I apologize for the technical difficulties that I was having. I will give people a couple of moments to funnel in and join us. Hopefully you all can see and hear me okay. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to have a roaring campfire like last time, but I do have a nice quality lantern and candle setup going. I will say that I am very excited to tell this story this evening, because it is one that hits close to home. One that I'm actually very close to home at. You see, I live in East Hampton, and I grew up in East Hampton. And this story is about the lake that is in the center of the town of East Hampton, Lake Pocotopaug. Now, last time that I was here, I told you a story of a spirit of great vengeance. This story is about the vengeance of a great spirit. Hundreds of years before any settlers came to this area, the Wangunk Indians had populated the area around Lake Pocotopaug. They had come to find this place as idyllic. It was a paradise. The fish from the lake was plentiful. The game that they could hunt in the surrounding forest and plains was abundant. The water was fresh from the rivers, and they found that they could have a almost peaceful life here. And I say almost peaceful because it allowed them to almost forget about their great spirit, Hobomoko. Hobomoko was omnipotent and all-powerful. And Hobomoko had a temperament. Still, life was good for the Wangunk Indians, and under the leadership of the chieftain Taramaugus, they thrived. And they had thrived for some time around the shores of Lake Pocotopaug, until one night, a night similar to tonight. There's a storm going on outside, and as the storm rages, a lone native is in a canoe on Lake Pocotopaug. He fights as best as he can, bucking against the waves, holding for dear life onto his canoe. But eventually it is too much, and he goes overboard, into Lake Pocotopaug. Something doesn't allow him to leave, though it is rumored that he is a very strong brave, a fierce swimmer amongst combative waters. There is nothing that he can do, and he is dragged to his doom. This upsets the tribe greatly. How could one so powerful have fallen? How could these events have occurred? And a rumor quickly spread among the tribe. It became more than just a rumor to most. This was Hobomoko, the Great Spirit. Somehow, they had displeased Hobomoko, and in doing so, they had incurred his wrath. Still, there were those that were not so willing to believe that it was indeed the wrath of a great spirit. Perhaps it had just been an accident, a storm that had caused the death of one that, even though he was a great swimmer, could not fight against these elements. And then a second drowning occurred. Another brave, Another fierce warrior, someone who very easily should have been able to combat against these waves and pull himself to safety. But again, it seemed like there was nothing he could do. And then a third happens, and the whole tribe can no longer deny what is obvious to all. Somehow, Hobomoko is upset. They have in some way incurred his wrath, and in doing so, Hobomoko has sent death, specifically from the waters of Lake Pocotopaug. If this wasn't enough, soon the idea of Hobomoko's wrath was cemented in all. Plagues came. Terrible, terrible disease and death. And it didn't just strike down the old or the weak. It was taking strong people. It was taking the best of them. And so they could no longer deny what became so clear. This was the wrath of their great spirit. Somehow they had incurred this. And so Taramaugus gathered his men, all the braves, all the elderly, even the children, and he gathered them to him. And he allowed them to have their voice in what was occurring. But it was clear to all. What had been occurring was Hobomoko's wrath. And so, to his medicine man, Taramaugus implored, please, please do something. He allowed each of his men to take an oath, and each one swore then that no matter what the great Hobomoko had asked, they would fulfill his command. Sorry, one moment. And as the medicine man, Gichtan, listened, he knew what he had to do. But before he left, Taramaugus rose. You have heard our words, Gichtan. Now go, with your chants and your incantations, and commune with the Great Spirit. Find out, we implore you, why he is so angry. If you discover some misdeeds, learn from him in any way that you can what we may do to gain his favor once more. You have heard our promises. Whatever Hobomoko wishes will be our command. And each one of the braves stood up and said the same pledge. No matter what price he asked, they would fulfill the wrathful god's command. And so the medicine man left, and he walked off into the night chanting and beating his drum. And hours passed in solemn silence for those gathered around the fire, for nothing that he came back with could be good. And soon enough, the chanting and the drum beats came from the edge of the forest. They turned, and sure enough, Gichtan was there. He solemnly looked at the chief, and as he made his way to the circle, he said nothing, leaving them all in worried suspense. It seemed as if what he had heard from the Great Spirit was too much for him to relay. After a while, Taramaugus demanded, "Give us Hobomoko's word, O Gichtan. We are all ready to hear and obey." Gichtan took a long moment, for what he found that he had to say to his chief was not easy. The Great Spirit requires the sacrifice of the fairest daughter of this tribe in the waters of Lake Pocotopaug. Your daughter, Nemone, O Terramaugus, must die. A shock ran through those gathered. It would be one thing to ask for the sacrifice of the brave warriors, or even the chief himself, but Hobomoko had been especially cruel in his selection. Nemone was the youngest daughter of Terramaugus. He would have to sacrifice her. He stood for a long time, the fire playing back and forth on his set face. All of the braves had heavy hearts as they watched and considered what their chief would do. Eventually, he did speak. The will of Hobomoko will be carried out, was all he could find he could say. Solemnly he got up he left the fire and walked through the woods to where his wigwam was. He wakes his youngest daughter, Nemone, and he takes her by the hand, and he begins to lead her through the forest. It is only through the profound sense of duty to his tribe, and perhaps more powerfully, the fear of Hobomoko's wrath, that drives him forward and allows him to tell his daughter gently what is occurring and what is to be done. Nemone listens as anyone could when you are hearing that you are about to be sacrificed. But she had known for a long time the troubles of her tribe. She had seen those bodies wash up on the shore. She had seen the strong die from the plagues. And with perhaps more stout of a heart than anyone expected, Nemone nobly honored the sacrifice. In fact, her own words are, "I am willing to do this at once. If only Hobomoko will bring relief sooner to our suffering tribe." I cannot even imagine what Terramaugus was going through, or what Nemone was going through, as they walked up to the highest point that they could find. She would have to be sacrificed in the waters of Lake Pocotopaug. That had been Hobomoko's exact desire. And so, as Terramaugus looked at his daughter, she had one request. She asked him to bind her hands. The thought was that she did not want her innate sense of survival, her innate will to live, to overcome her noble sense of duty to her tribe. She did not want to break out of the sacrifice. And so, Terramaugus bound his daughter's hands, and she walked to the edge of the cliff. She did not say a single word, but jumped. It is said that as soon as the waters of Lake Pocotopaug enveloped Nemone, the curse of Hobomoko was lifted. Gone was the Great Spirit's vengeance. In fact, no other Wangunk native perished in the waters of Lake Pocotopaug afterwards. They went on to have centuries of peace. And in fact, it wasn't until December 8th of 1885 that one Jeremiah Wall fell through the ice and died in the waters of Lake Pocotopaug. Did this break Hobomoko's peace? Was this the sign of things to come? Had Nemone's sacrifice run its course? I believe yes. Because Lake Pocotopaug has had very strange things happen since Daniel Wall fell through the ice, or Jeremiah Well fell through the ice. You see, there are reports even to this day of strange incidents around Lake Pocotopaug. Strange senses of burning, smells that aren't there. Algae blooms, anyone who's from East Hampton knows that they come yearly, are often accredited to the supernatural, at least in terms of their ferocity and their unwillingness to go away. There are also, unfortunately, lives that are still lost in East Hampton, in Lake Pocotopaug. Having grown up in East Hampton and living here my entire life, I can attest that there have been some strange things around that lake. Personally, I have seen disembodied lights over the lake that there couldn't possibly have been. I know of other people who have seen such things. What you believe, and whether or not you believe it is the vengeance of a great spirit, one Hobomoko, that is causing all of these paranormal disturbances on Lake Pocotopaug, is entirely up to you. But one cannot deny the sheer fact that strange things do happen here. Unfortunately, and fortunately, we know that we cannot sacrifice anyone to Hobomoko to appease his wrath if this is indeed him. How we will deal with the Great Spirit, I'm not sure. But if you live in East Hampton, know that potentially Hobomoko's wrath may fall upon you, and hope that the peace that Nemone brings does extend to yourself. I want to thank everyone for joining us once again. This was the tale of East Hampton and the story of the Lake Pocotopaug and the sacrifice of Princess Nemone. Thank you once again for joining us all. I'm Andrew. Have a wonderful night and many, many happy haunts.